What is there left to say about our native Bostonian, Benjamin Franklin? Absolutely plenty. Mr. Bird has created an oversized biography which contains a sampling of Ben's oversized life. From the enlightening end papers to the sidebars and captions, this book is a welcome addition to the staggering number of books about Ben. The book is conveniently divided into sections depicted chronologically, including his 5-year apprenticeship to his brother James and the reason he needed to leave Boston. The colorful drawings are whimsical yet detailed, informative, and clever. Ben Franklin is an American original, a Renaissance man who Robert Byrd has brought to the next generation of children. I am delighted to present the 2013 Boston Globe Hornbook Award for Nonfiction to Electric Ben, The Amazing Life and Times of Benjamin Franklin, published by Dial Books for Young Readers, an imprint of Penguin Group, edited by Lucia Monfried, written and illustrated by Robert Byrd.
Thank you. Wow. I'm not sure I should tell you guys what I plan to put in here, but it'll be later. The first gratitude I would like to express is for everyone who spoke before me tonight and read from their speeches. I gave it my best, but 15 minutes, I couldn't memorize it, so I was very happy to see that. I would like to express my gratitude to the Hornbook and the judges Sarah Ellis, Karen Costco, Pam Yoska, who selected Electric Ben for the 2013 award. I would also like to thank Roger Sutton, the editor of the Hornbook, Katrina Hadeen, and all the Hornbook staff who worked tirelessly behind the scene making this event so special and the award such an honor to receive. Thanks also must go to my most knowledgeable editor, Lucia Monfried, who did come up with the title Electric Ben. I can't take credit. And my skilled designer, Jason Henry. In my children's book class at the University of the Arts, we often talk about the books we read growing up and what they meant to us then and what we can remember about them now. What is still vivid about those books are the pictures, these magical illustrations that illuminated those wonderful early tales. As a child, I loved the stories, but I never thought of them much as an integral half of the combination of art and text that make a book actually work. I was always enthralled by the pictures. I copied the art from Robert Lawson's Ferdinand and Gustav Tengren's Pokey Little Puppy and Ernest Shepard's Winnie the Pooh books. I am sure I read Virginia Lee Burton's Little House hundreds of times. I knew the stories well then, but now I can't remember all the words, yet I can see the pictures clearly today. I didn't see these pictures as merely illustrations that accompanied the stories. The pictures were real, genuine, living people, animals, and places. I had no concept of an illustrator making these pictures, and I never remotely considered how they could somehow be transported onto a page in one of my books. These books are fiction, but I read and made pictures from many nonfiction sources, books about history, geography, explorers, dinosaurs, the universe. I still refuse to believe that Pluto is not a planet. Stories about people and places around the world. I loved encyclopedias, especially the Book of Knowledge, with its beautiful color plates of birds and fish and shells that I still refer to. My taste in fiction expanded to books like Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, with N.C. Wyeth's incomparable art, and Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book with illustrations by Fritz Eichenberg. I read Melville's Moby Dick, and I am sure I missed all of the symbolism. But at least I did admire Anton Otto Fischer's exuberant accompanying drawings and paintings. As an older child, I made my own complex pictures, scenes of farms filled with animals, circuses with lions, elephants, clowns, and acrobats. I drew cowboys and Indians, panoramas filled with figures and horses. I drew ships and castles and exotic people and places. I think this early experience making these pictures was instrumental in shaping my love of history, and it's reflected in the work I do now. I have always believed there's a rather fine line between fiction and nonfiction, especially in the approach to the artwork in a picture book. Nonfiction picture books can be created with the same imaginative and exciting results that so many excellent fictional books achieve. We have to engross the young reader, follow events faithfully and honestly, but the format must be as stimulating as that of any myth, folk, or fairy tale. As an illustrator, I am given the exciting and challenging opportunity to have my art enlighten a story in a way that words alone might not be able to. Pictures can define action and narrative in many inspirational ways that can help a story come alive. These images become fixed in the child's mind and are forever associated with their remembrance of a particular story. I can easily see Lawson's perfect rendition of Ferdinand sitting in the bull ring. And as strong as the storyline is, I cannot imagine it being anywhere nearly as dynamic without that illustration. The impact of the image is instant, and the great ones are lasting. I began my career as a studio illustrator. I did illustrations for everything from newspaper advertising, magazine editorials, and greeting cards. I did some ink line drawings for a folktale for a small publisher in Philadelphia, and I liked the artistic freedom working with fantasy subject matter gave me. So I made a series of drawings for the Dr. Dolittle story, and from a story I made up about a boy in pajamas and his toy koala that travel around in a balloon. I don't think the story was very good, but the pictures were included in an article in American Artist written by Diana Clement. Robert Krauss saw the story, and this led to my first children's book work for Windmill Books, black and white drawings. My first full-color book was with Ricky Levinson at E.P. Dutton. She showed me how to lay out a book like a film storyboard, constantly changing the pacing of the pictures, moving in and out like a camera, pacing the story. We did The Emperor's New Clothes, with all animals, with a splendidly clothed and then very unclothed emperor, an absolutely pompous lion. I have tried to tell the stories of Leonardo and Ben Franklin with a visual treatment that enlightens them with energy, passion, and humor. I hope in some ways these books do have the feeling of legend or maybe even myth. I have to use some caution here, though, as I often think of the old Celtic concept that truth and facts have nothing whatsoever to do with a good story. But they really do. Certainly in nonfiction, and maybe even in fiction. As both the illustrator and author, I'm in a position that the illustrator is not usually in, and that is one of making most of the decisions about a book. I am the writer, the researcher, the layout artist, and the picture maker. This all sounds great. I am in control. But then comes the inherent problem with writing and illustrating, and that is trying not to write to a preconceived visual image. All artists form pictures in their minds as they read or write. And sometimes the image is so powerful and appealing, the artist tries to force it into the text somehow or somewhere so they can actually get to make that picture. This does not always work. It may not relate enough to the text or just not be necessary. The art may not really help the narrative. This is one reason I try and work the text first before I begin to draw, but the temptation is always there. There are situations, though, where a strong visual concept can be worked into a story, but it has to be a natural fit. I had seen early prints of maps of Boston, showing aerial views of the harbor with ships and buildings and even people. And I wanted to show this scene. It was just right for the book's first spread, Ben's Beginnings. I wanted something from one of Poor Richard's almanacs, and that art wound up being a mix of actual graphic images Franklin used and my own interpretations of his famous sayings, many of which he admitted borrowing. Sometime you come across a great piece of reference, something you know nothing about that will influence both the writing and the art. The scene where the aging Dr. Franklin is being carried in a sedan chair was inspired by a painting I saw in a book about the Revolutionary War. I had to use it. In another illustration, Ben is standing on a giant globe holding a ship and a plant wearing a three-piece red suit, surrounded by stars, comets, the sun and the moon, and storms and rainbows. There is no logical explanation for the composition of this picture, other than I thought it would look good and tell a story. The red suit, however, is quite logical and taken from a well-known portrait. The picture biography develops from myriad sources. I use my own reference books, the library, the internet. I'm grateful for the assistance from the library staff at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. When your subject is from a period before the photograph, you need to consider the accuracy of the pictorial material. Old prints and paintings are basically the only source of visual aid available, and they can prove unreliable. Fortunately, with prominent figures such as Leonardo and Franklin, there is a good amount of information that I was able to examine and use. Aside from depicting the lives of these two masters with accuracy and as much personality as possible in the short picture book format, I wanted to give young readers a feeling of what it might be like to live in those bygone centuries. How did people dress? What were their houses like? What was it like to be a child? How did they survive without cable TV? Lots of kids say they don't like history. They say, why should I care about that old stuff? What does it matter now? Well, let's have some fun and excitement with history. I believe we can make the telling of mankind's enduring saga a meaningful and lively one. I always thought that someone who maintained a disinterest or dislike of history didn't have it presented to them very well. If that is the case, then it's our job to present it to them really well. Let kids be exposed to fantastic people and events that have unfolded forever. How can reading about cavemen, pyramids, the Colosseum, the great age of discovery in science and art and astronauts be boring? Only in the telling of the tale. Despite the inescapable presence of electronic media and the doomsayers who love to pronounce the demise of the printed page, we will always have our place. Surely there are serious challenges to our business today, but it must be our purpose and responsibility to stand up to them. The best way, I am sure, is for us to produce books of the highest quality possible. It's quite a significant privilege and experience to know that your story may give pleasure and knowledge to a child, and that your pictures can leave them with lasting and valuable impressions. Watch a child turn the pages of a book they like and be reassured. Thank you. Okay.